I wasn't even gone a full day when it all started unraveling. It was a Wednesday morning, late spring. I remember it because I had packed my suitcase half-heartedly the night before and left my razor on the kitchen counter, where she always hated it. The flight was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. out of St. Louis to Albuquerque. It wasn't my first business trip, and I doubted it'd be the last. Just another 2-day conference with suits, handshakes, and overly air-conditioned ballrooms. But I kissed my wife on the cheek before I left, told her I'd bring her something from the airport gift shop, and backed the truck out of the driveway like nothing was off. Like we were normal. My name's Kyle, by the way. 33. HVAC tech turned small business guy. Married 6 years. Lived in a cul-de-sac out in Chesterfield, Missouri. Lawn was always mowed, the mortgage was never late, and we waved to the neighbors when we took out the trash. Nothing fancy, just solid. My neighbor, Ben, well, he's the kind of guy you borrow jumper cables from and grab beers with while you both pretend to care about college football. He's 5 years older than me, built like a cinder block, and worked construction most of his life. We got along. Hell, I'd even say he was one of my best friends. He'd helped me build the deck out back last summer, and I helped him move his mother into assisted living in January when she got too forgetful to be alone. So when my phone buzzed at the hotel around 2 p.m. that day, I didn't think twice when it was Ben's name. "Hey, man," I said, cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder while I struggled with the hotel keycard. "Kyle. Sorry to bother you. You busy?" "Nah, just got into my room." "What's up?" There was a pause. Someone broke into my shed. Took my Milwaukee rotary hammer drill. I winced. That wasn't a cheap tool. Damn. You call the cops? Yeah, but you know how that goes. I've got a job tomorrow morning. Need to bore through concrete. You think I could borrow yours? Of course, I said without hesitation. I've got it on the shelf in the garage. Tell Erin I said hi. She'll let you in. Thanks, man. I owe you big time. We hung up. I dropped my duffel on the bed, kicked off my boots, and flipped on the TV. It never occurred to me, not for a second, that something more was brewing back home. That I'd just handed my wife over to temptation on a silver platter. I'd known for a while Erin wasn't happy. She still smiled at my jokes, still kissed me goodnight, but something in her eyes had changed. She used to sing to herself when she did dishes, used to slip her cold feet against mine in bed. Lately, she'd been quieter. Restless. Like a wind-up toy that had started to unwind, slowly but surely. I asked her if she was okay more times than I can count. Always got the same answer. I'm fine, Kyle. Just tired. But I noticed things. Her new obsession with looking put together. Wearing perfume just to take out the trash. Tight skirts, thigh-high stockings, black lace peeking out from under her tops. She'd been working from home since the pandemic, and now she treated every day like a runway walk. I tried to compliment her. Tried to grab her from behind in the kitchen like I used to. But she'd gently pull away and tell me she was busy. So yeah, maybe I should have seen it coming. But you don't want to believe your best friend and your wife could look at each other that way. That night in the hotel, I FaceTimed her. Hey, babe, I said when she picked up. She was in the kitchen, standing by the counter, her hair tied up, a low-cut sweater on that looked deliberate. Hey, she said, smiling faintly. How's New Mexico? Dry, I said with a chuckle. You holding down the fort? She nodded. Ben stopped by. Got the drill. Cool. Hope it helps him out. I thought I saw a flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Hesitation? But it was gone as quick as it came. She waved me off and told me to enjoy my conference. I told her I missed her. She said it back. But her tone was wrong. I flew back Friday evening, got home around 9. The house was clean. Too clean. Erin hugged me and asked about the trip, but her embrace was shallow, like her arms forgot how to hold me. Over the next few days, things went back to normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something in me had shifted. I found myself watching her when she wasn't looking. Watching Ben too. It was the little things that gave them away. The way she'd glance out the window when he mowed his lawn. The way he waved to her, too eagerly, when she stepped onto the porch. The short smiles. The awkward pauses when I came outside to say hey. Then one night, after she fell asleep, I went into the garage. The rotary hammer drill was sitting back on the shelf. I picked it up. There was a red smear on the handle. Lipstick. Erin never came in here. Never. I stared at that handle for 10 minutes. Long enough for the rage to come in waves. Long enough for something cold and hard to settle in my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I didn't punch walls or break dishes. I just stood there, turning the drill over in my hand, feeling something in me change. That night, I lay beside her and whispered, "I forgive you." She didn't stir. But forgiveness is a tricky thing. Sometimes it comes with fire. I didn't sleep much after that night. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to lie next to her any longer than I had to. Didn't want to feel the warmth of a woman who let another man, my friend, into our home. Into me. But I played along. Smiled when she asked if I wanted eggs or pancakes. Watched reruns with her after dinner. Even made love to her once, though it felt like trying to hold a ghost. Her body was there, but something about her eyes, blank, almost afraid, told me she was somewhere else. Probably in Ben's arms. And I kept telling myself, I forgave her. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in that short skirt, stockings riding high, lips painted and parted. Not for me. For him. I started watching Ben from my front porch. He left early most mornings, in his rust-red Silverado, construction tools rattling in the back. He'd wave at me like always. And I'd wave back. I wonder if he saw it, how stiff my arm was, how dead my smile looked. But he never acted like anything was wrong. That was the part that made it worse. No shame. No guilt. Like what happened in my garage was just a thing, an accident. A moment that didn't mean anything. To me, it meant everything. I started checking his place at night, driving by after running errands I didn't need to run. His windows glowed blue from his TV, his house quiet, porch light always on. Nothing out of the ordinary. But the more normal everything looked, the more twisted it all felt. Like I was trapped in a painting of my own life, and someone else had smeared their fingerprints all over the canvas. One Sunday, I took Erin to church. She dressed modestly, like she used to. Sat beside me. Smiled at neighbors. I held her hand during the sermon and watched her squeeze it like everything was fine. But I didn't hear a single word the preacher said. I kept picturing them. Her on the workbench in my garage. Him behind her. Her mouth open, panting in his ear. I clenched my fists until my knuckles went white. After service, we had lunch with her parents. They made small talk. Asked about my business. Erin laughed too loud at her dad's dumb jokes. I excused myself early. Said I had to get some parts from the supply warehouse before Monday. I didn't go to the warehouse. I went to the edge of town. To an old property I used to help manage before I got into HVAC. An abandoned farmhouse. Dilapidated. No one had lived there in years. But the barn still stood. Big. Empty. Quiet. I broke the lock with a crowbar and stepped inside, wiping cobwebs from my face. The smell of dry hay and rusted metal greeted me like an old friend. This place had potential. This place could become something. I spent the next few nights there. Cleaning. Prepping. Planning. On a Tuesday afternoon, Ben waved at me again. I was sitting on the porch, sipping a beer, watching the sun go down over the trees. "Hey, Kyle," he called. "Hey, brother," I replied. "Thanks again for letting me borrow that hammer drill," he said. "Came in clutch." "Anytime," I said. "I got some new blades for my table saw too, if you ever need them." "Appreciate that, man." I smiled. That was the last conversation we ever had. 2 days later, a thunderstorm rolled through. The kind with lightning that cracks the sky open like a beer can and shakes the walls. Perfect weather for an accident. I waited until nearly midnight. Aaron was asleep. I slid out of bed without a sound, grabbed the spare truck keys from the drawer, and eased out the front door. The wind was picking up. Clouds racing past the moon. I drove with my lights off for the first mile. When I got to Ben's place, it was quiet. No dog. No girlfriend. No one but him. I parked around the corner and walked through the trees. My boots crunched over wet mulch and fallen leaves. I wore gloves. Black hoodie. Head down. No phone. I reached into my backpack and pulled out the jerry can. Gasoline. He had a wooden shed behind the house. Dry. Cracked. The perfect tinderbox. I splashed the fuel inside, soaking the walls, the floor, the workbench. It reeked like 100 car accidents. Then I lit the match. Just one. I didn't watch it go up. I was already walking back toward the trees when the first whoosh filled the air and the heat rippled across the backyard. Orange light danced behind me, flickering through the branches. I never turned around. The siren started 10 minutes later. The next morning, the news was everywhere. Local house fire under investigation. They ruled it an electrical issue. Ben made it out. Barely. Suffered some burns. Lost everything. His tools. His equipment. His history. I acted shocked. Erin cried when she heard. "Oh my God, that's awful," she said, pressing her hand to her mouth. "Should we do something? Take him food? Clothes?" I looked her in the eye for the first time in days. "I think he's gotten enough from us already." She blinked. Her lip trembled. She knew. I could see it in her face. But she didn't say a word. Just turned away and went into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. I went back to the porch. Popped open another beer. Smoke still drifted faintly in the air, hanging low across the treetops. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. Not justice. Not peace. But something close. Ben didn't come around anymore. The fire had turned his house to a skeleton. A few charred beams and a melted garden hose. The siding was gone, windows shattered, roof collapsed like a crumpled beer can. The county put caution tape around the property, and people from the neighborhood brought him casseroles and garbage bags full of old clothes. But not me. I kept my distance. Watched from across the street like a stranger. Sometimes I'd spot him parked in his truck by what used to be his driveway, just staring at the wreckage, his arm wrapped in gauze, his face hollow. I never went over to say a word. Erin didn't either. Not after what I said. "I think he's gotten enough from us already." She hadn't asked for details. Hadn't pressed. But the look in her eyes when she passed the mirror now was different, haunted. As if the reflection staring back at her didn't quite belong to the same woman anymore. We were both ghosts in our own house. A few days after the fire, I came home from work to find her sitting on the floor of our bedroom, legs crossed, staring at a box in her lap. It was the old cedar one we kept wedding keepsakes in, photos, a dried rose, the cheap gold-plated cake topper. She didn't look up when I walked in. "He was wearing cologne," she said quietly. "That day. When he came to get the drill." I stopped in the doorway. "He never wore cologne," she said. "But that day, he did. And I noticed it the second he stepped inside." I said nothing. He looked at me like I was something he'd already unwrapped. "And her voice cracked. "I should have told him to get the drill and leave. I should have shut the door behind him." "But you didn't," I said flatly. She shook her head, fingers tightening around the lid of the box. "I thought I wanted to feel something again. I thought maybe if someone else wanted me, I'd remember what it felt like to be wanted at all." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "I didn't even like it," she said. "I just..." "You didn't stop it." Silence. She finally looked up at me, eyes red but dry. "No. I didn't." I sat down on the edge of the bed. My jaw clenched. Hands in fists. "You know," I said, "when I first told you I forgave you, I thought I meant it." She looked at me like she was bracing for something. "But now, I'm not sure what I meant anymore. Maybe I just didn't want to face what it really said about us. About you. About him." Erin stood slowly, placing the box back on the dresser. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I thought about that. Really thought. Then, no. I hate who we let ourselves become. That night, we didn't speak again. She curled up on her side of the bed, back to me. I stared at the ceiling. I heard her crying when she thought I was asleep. I didn't comfort her. I didn't reach out. I just lay there, wondering if I'd become the villain of my own story, or just the last honest man in it. Ben never rebuilt. After the insurance money came through, he packed what little he had left and moved out to a trailer park outside Columbia. I heard from a buddy of his that he was drinking more. Working less. Mostly kept to himself. Sometimes I imagine driving out there. Sitting across from him at a bar. Not saying anything, just locking eyes with him until something gave. But I didn't. That part of my life was already in the ground. Buried under ashes and broken trust. Weeks passed. Erin started seeing a therapist. Said she needed to sort herself out. I told her that was good. I stayed busy. Took on more jobs. Started leaving earlier, coming home later. Spent my weekend sanding down the deck Ben helped me build, like if I stripped away the layers, I could erase every fingerprint he left on this house. One Saturday morning, I was out in the garage, reorganizing tools. The workbench was where it happened. I knew that. Every time I stood there, it whispered at me. But this time, I didn't flinch. I cleared the surface. Wiped it down. Removed the rotary hammer drill and threw it in the scrap bin. Then I stood in the doorway and watched the sunlight stream in, warm and slow. That's when Erin appeared behind me. She looked smaller lately. Not physically, but inside. Like the wind had gotten to her and peeled something away. I made coffee, she said. Thanks. We stood there for a long moment. I was thinking, she said, maybe I'll go stay with my sister for a while. Just for a week or two. Give us both some room. I didn't fight it. Maybe that's a good idea, I said. She looked disappointed at how easily I agreed. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just tired. She packed light. Left the next morning. Didn't kiss me goodbye. Didn't ask me to promise anything. I stood on the porch and watched her drive off. And for the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs again. Not peace. Not joy. But the beginning of silence. And sometimes, silence is the only kind of healing a man can hope for. The house was quieter without her. You don't realize how many sounds a person makes until they're gone. The soft creak of a drawer opening. The shuffle of slippers across the tile floor. The way a spoon clinks inside a coffee mug. Without Erin, the silence didn't just fill the rooms, it grew legs and followed me. She texted me once after she got to her sister's place. I made it safely. I'll check in every few days. I wrote back. Good. Take care. And that was it. I went to work. I came home. I reheated dinners from the freezer. Watched TV until I couldn't stand the laugh tracks anymore, then shut it off and listened to the hum of the refrigerator instead. Sometimes, I'd go out to the porch at night, light a cigarette I didn't even want, and stare down the dark street like something might appear, something that made sense of everything that had happened. But nothing ever came. Just the rustle of leaves. And the faint scent of burnt wood, still lingering. One day, a letter showed up. Not a text. Not an email. A handwritten letter, like something from another life. It was from Ben. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in familiar blocky print. I sat at the kitchen table for a while before opening it. Drank half a beer and stared at the envelope like it might explode. When I finally tore it open, it was short. Kyle. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know what I expected at all. But I think you were the only real friend I ever had, and I wrecked that. You didn't deserve what happened. None of it. If you burned my place down. I guess I understand. Ben. No signature. Just that flat, burned-out tone. I read it twice. Then folded it back up and slid it into the drawer where we used to keep spare keys and expired coupons. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. I didn't feel sorry for him. But I didn't feel proud either. He was right, I had been his only real friend. And he destroyed me for a few minutes of thrill in a garage. Later that night, Erin called. I stared at the phone as it buzzed on the table, her name glowing on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, I said. Hey, she echoed. Long silence. How's your sister's place? I asked. Quiet, she said. But in a different way. Good different or bad different? I don't know yet. Another pause. I was thinking, she said finally. Maybe when I come back, we could do counseling. Like real counseling. Not the stuff we tried once and bailed on. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. Why? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Because I miss who we used to be. I almost laughed. We were never perfect, Erin. I know. But we weren't, this. I looked out the kitchen window. The yard was dark, the garage barely visible. She had no idea how close we were to never speaking again. I don't hate you, I said softly. But I don't know if love's supposed to survive everything. Maybe it's not, she whispered. I waited. Then, come back next week. We'll talk. That's all I can promise. She said okay. And we hung up. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, turning slowly above me, blades slicing the dark like time counting down. When the sun finally rose, I got up, pulled on some jeans, and went out to the garage. That workbench still stood like an altar to my humiliation. But today, I didn't flinch. I pulled everything off it, tools, rags, the half-used bottle of polish, and tossed them into a box. I unscrewed the vice grip Ben installed, flung it into the scrap pile, and scrubbed the surface until the wood was bare and clean. Then I took a can of black paint, one I had stashed away for touch-ups, and rolled a fresh layer over the entire surface. No stains. No fingerprints. No memory. Just black. Clean and blank. Like starting over. That afternoon, I drove. No destination. Just me and the road. Missouri skies were wide that day, and the wind hit the cab of my truck like a promise. I passed fields. Rusted barns. Empty motels with flickering vacancy signs. Then, on a whim, I turned onto a gravel road. One I hadn't driven in years. It led to the edge of an old park where Erin and I used to walk when we were dating. Before bills. Before routine. Before temptation made itself at home between our walls. I parked, got out, and stood in the quiet. For a moment, I tried to picture the two of us here, holding hands, laughing, her hair in the wind. But the image wouldn't come. It was gone. Erased. I stood there anyway, letting the wind pass through me. Then I turned around and drove home. Because whatever was coming next, whatever us meant now, I'd face it head on. Even if that meant doing it alone. Erin came home the following Wednesday. She pulled into the driveway a little after 5, right as the sun was dipping low behind the trees. Her old blue suitcase sat in the back seat like a passenger she didn't want to bring in with her. When she stepped out of the car, she didn't wave. Just looked at me, standing in the doorway. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She looked thinner. Not in an unhealthy way, more like she'd been shedding things. The kind of weight that isn't just physical. We didn't hug. Didn't kiss. Just walked back inside like strangers retracing old footprints. The house felt smaller with her in it again. But not warmer. Not yet. We didn't talk about Ben. Not that night. Not the next day. It was a rule neither of us said out loud. He had become a shadow neither of us wanted to name. Instead, we talked about practical things. What to do with the lawn. Who was coming to the next neighborhood cookout. Whether or not we should repaint the guest room. It was polite. Like we were roommates who hadn't quite learned each other's quirks yet. But every now and then, I'd catch her staring at the garage door. Just a glance. Just a flicker. And I knew. She was still thinking about it too. Friday night, we sat on the porch with 2 cups of tea between us. Not beer. Not whiskey. Just something quiet and simple. "You repainted the workbench," she said. "I did." She took a slow sip. "Black?" Seemed fitting. She nodded. Silence stretched between us. "I've been writing things down," she said suddenly. "What kind of things?" "Memories. Feelings. Stuff I never said when I should've." "Therapy tell you to do that?" "No. That part was mine." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I wrote this for you. You don't have to read it now." I didn't reach for it. But I didn't stop her from placing it on the table between us either. "Thanks," I said. She hesitated. Do you ever think about what comes next? For us?" I stared out across the lawn. The wind had picked up. Leaves tumbled down the street like stray thoughts. "I think about what's left," I said. "After the fire. After the cheating. After the lies." She nodded, eyes locked on the ground. "And what do you see?" I shrugged. "I see a field. Burned out. But maybe, if we're lucky, there's still something under the dirt that wants to grow." I didn't read the letter that night. I waited until the next morning, when the house was still dark and Erin was asleep in the guest room. I sat at the kitchen table, alone with the soft hum of the fridge, and unfolded the page. It wasn't long. It wasn't flowery. It wasn't perfect. But it was raw. Kyle. I don't expect you to ever forget what I did. And maybe I don't even deserve forgiveness. But I miss you, not just as a husband, but as my best friend. You were always the one who fixed things. And I was the one who broke them. I didn't sleep with Ben because I loved him. I did it because I didn't love myself. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but it's the truth. I can't ask you to go back. But I'm still here, if you ever want to go forward. Aaron. I sat with those words for a long time. Then I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer, next to Ben's. 2 different ghosts. 2 different wounds. But they lived in the same place now. And maybe, so did I. Over the next week, Aaron and I took small steps. We ate dinner at the same table again. We watched a movie and laughed at the same parts. We even talked about counseling, real counseling this time. Weekly. Joint sessions. Hard truths. We weren't pretending nothing had happened. We were finally letting it all be real. One night, as I was cleaning out the garage, Aaron stepped in and stood by the door. "It still smells like sawdust in here," she said. "It'll always smell like sawdust." She looked at the workbench, her eyes soft. "I think we should build something together." I blinked. "Like what?" "I don't know. A table. A cabinet. Something new. Something that isn't ruined." I considered that. Then nodded. "Yeah. Okay." And just like that, we began again, not with a kiss, or a vow, or some grand apology, but with the idea of building something, slowly. Together. Out front, the lawn swayed in the wind. Across the street, the burned shell of Ben's old house had been cleared. Just dirt now. A flat patch of earth, waiting for someone to decide what came next. Funny how fitting that was. Because in the end, all we have is what we decide to grow from what we've lost. By the second weekend after Aaron returned, we had started working on the table. She'd ordered a blueprint online, some modern-looking thing with sleek edges and a wide surface, meant to go in a dining room we rarely used. I told her it didn't match anything else in the house. "Exactly," she said. "Maybe we need one thing that doesn't remind us of the past." Hard to argue with that. So we sanded and measured. I cut the boards. She stained them. Side by side, we worked in quiet rhythm, like a couple patching up a canoe before trying to cross a wide river again. On Sunday morning, I went out early to the garage. Aaron was still in bed, and I figured I'd surprise her by cutting the last set of legs before she woke up. That's when I saw it. A letter. Just sitting there. On the edge of the workbench. No envelope. No stamp. No name written across it. Just a single piece of paper, folded twice. I looked around the garage instinctively. No one. The side door was locked. The front garage door was still shut. I unfolded it. And read. "You think it's over, but it's not. You think you've forgiven her, but deep down, you haven't. I saw what you did to Ben's house. I know. You're not the only one who's good at watching." There was no signature. No clue who wrote it. Just those words. Cold. Certain. Sharp as a nail through the heart. I didn't tell Aaron. I folded the note back up, slipped it into my pocket, and went inside like nothing happened. All morning, I watched her as we worked, how she laughed when she spilled stain on her shirt, how she furrowed her brow when lining up 2 uneven boards. She looked like a woman building something new. But suddenly, I didn't feel like a man rebuilding anything. I felt hunted. That evening, after she went to shower, I slipped out and took the letter to the garage. I burned it in the metal bucket we used for sawdust and trash. Watched the edges curl in, blackening to ash. The smell of it, smoke and old secrets, hung in my nostrils for the rest of the night. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. Someone knew. Someone had been close enough to see everything, Aaron with Ben, me with the matchbook, the flame, the rage. Close enough to watch but quiet enough not to be seen. I thought about the neighbors. Old Mrs. Hastings across the street, always pruning her roses like she was snipping lives short. The teenage kid next door with the drone. That mailman who always lingered a little too long at every box. My mind ran wild. What if it was someone in our circle? Someone we'd invited into our home at some point? Someone who smiled while sipping lemonade on our porch? I didn't sleep that night. Not because of guilt. But because of the unknown. 2 days later, it happened again. I opened the mailbox expecting bills. Instead, I found a torn scrap of cardboard, shoved between envelopes. On it, scrawled in the same blocky handwriting. Ask her who else she dressed up for. My hands went numb. I stared at it for a long time, my shadow stretching over the driveway as the sun sank behind the trees. Then I walked back inside. Erin was making dinner. Spaghetti. The way she always made it when she wanted comfort. I set the scrap of cardboard on the table between us. She looked at it. Then up at me. I don't know who's doing this, she said immediately. That wasn't the question. Silence. I could see the pulse in her neck beating fast. Her hands were still covered in tomato sauce, a wooden spoon shaking slightly in her grip. I told you it was just Ben, she said. And I meant it. I didn't say anything. She stepped back like I'd struck her. Why would I lie now, she whispered. After everything? After you burned down his house? I flinched. She saw it. I knew it, she said, eyes wide. You never told me, but I knew. We stared at each other across that kitchen, two liars finally looking through the glass. I didn't think anyone else knew, I said quietly. Well, now someone does, she snapped. And for the first time, I saw something in Erin I hadn't seen since the beginning, fear. Real fear. Not about me. But about what else was coming. That night, I stayed awake in the living room, lights off, holding a crowbar like some low-rent soldier standing guard. At 2:13 a.m., the doorbell rang. Just once. I stood slowly. Opened the door. There was nothing but darkness and a single piece of paper taped to the outside window. I peeled it off, heart thudding like a jackhammer in my chest. Next time, I'll bring friends. I didn't sleep after the note on the window. I just sat there in the dark, crowbar in hand, waiting for sounds, footsteps, whispers, tires on gravel. But nothing came. At sunrise, Erin came down the stairs slowly. Her hair was messy, and there were red marks on her arms where she must have clutched herself in bed all night. She froze when she saw me still in the living room. You didn't come to bed, she said. I couldn't. Her eyes flicked to the crowbar on my lap. You're scaring me. Good, I said. Because I'm scared, too. I stood up, walked past her, and opened the garage door. Every time I stepped in there now, it felt like being watched. Like that space, where she and Ben had crossed that line, had become a portal. Not to guilt, but to consequences. The smell of smoke still lingered on the walls, even though the house fire had happened blocks away. I didn't know if it was in my head, or in the air. That afternoon, I drove to the police station. Not to confess. Not yet. Just to ask. I told them someone had been leaving threatening notes. That my house may have been watched. That I didn't know if it was a prank or something worse. The officer behind the glass nodded like he'd heard it all before. Any enemies? Anyone you had trouble with recently? Yeah, I said. My best friend. He raised an eyebrow. I corrected. He took down the details. Promised they'd send someone to drive by once or twice in the evenings. But he didn't seem too worried. Neither did I. That was the problem. 2 days passed. No new notes. No knocks at night. Just that tightening tension between Erin and me. Like our walls were breathing with anxiety. We kept trying to finish the table, but every time we got near it, the atmosphere shifted. We'd say something normal, pass the drill, or, that leg's a little off, but it felt like talking at a funeral. Then on the third night, it happened. We were eating dinner when the lights cut out. All at once. Complete blackout. Not just a flicker. Not a storm. Total darkness. Erin dropped her fork. It clattered against the plate. "Check your phone," I said. She turned it over. Dead. I checked mine. Also dead. Then I walked to the front window and peeled back the curtain. Across the street, every single house still had lights glowing warm and steady. Only ours was out. "Breaker?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded and grabbed a flashlight from the junk drawer. I moved through the house slow, like walking in a dream I couldn't wake up from. When I opened the basement door, it felt colder than it should have. Every hair on my arm stood up. I descended. At the bottom, I swung the light beam toward the breaker box. And saw it. The cover was open. All the switches were flipped off. Someone had done it manually. And taped a note to the inside of the panel. It wasn't written like the others. This one was printed. All caps. Clean font. "I'm inside." I dropped the flashlight. And ran. When I burst into the living room, Erin was standing in the middle of the floor, wide-eyed, phone in hand. It was glowing again. Power had come back. Someone was in the house, I told her. She stared. "Basement," I said. They flipped the switches themselves. She covered her mouth with her hand. I called the cops. They came within 10 minutes this time. 2 cars. Lights but no sirens. They walked through the house, checked every room, every lock, every closet. Nothing. The back door was closed. But not locked. No sign of forced entry, one officer said. "You sure you didn't just leave the basement open yourself?" I said nothing. Because now I wasn't sure of anything. That night, Erin refused to sleep in the bedroom. She pulled her blanket to the floor of the living room and stayed up with all the lights on. I joined her. We didn't talk much. At around 3 a.m., she said the words I had been waiting for since it all started. "I think whoever's doing this, they're not trying to hurt us." I looked over at her. "What do you mean?" "I think they're trying to punish us." We sat in silence. Because she was right. It wasn't random. It wasn't just about the fire or the affair. It was about judgment. In the morning, I checked the security camera I'd installed above the garage weeks ago. I hadn't looked at the footage in days. I loaded the last 72 hours onto my laptop. Hours of nothing. Birds. Delivery trucks. Erin parking her car. Then something. At 2:11 a.m., the night the doorbell rang, the camera picked up a figure. Tall. Hooded. Moving with purpose. They approached the front door, rang the bell once. Then taped the note to the window. Before leaving, they turned directly toward the camera. And smiled. Not a friendly smile. A knowing one. I froze the frame. And my blood turned to ice. It wasn't Ben. It wasn't anyone from the neighborhood. It was someone I recognized from long ago. A man I'd gone to high school with. A guy who once got arrested for stalking someone in college. He had worked briefly at the same company as me, years back. I hadn't seen him since I'd fired him for stealing tools from the warehouse. His name was Cody Weller. He was obsessed with justice. Obsessed with people who didn't deserve what they had. And now he'd found me again. And he was playing God. The moment I saw Cody Weller's face on that frozen frame, everything clicked into place. The notes. The threats. The smile at the camera. He wasn't just watching us for revenge or satisfaction. He was watching us for sport. And we were the game. I didn't tell Erin who it was right away. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I didn't want to say his name out loud. Saying it would make him real again. Would make all of it, his obsession, his hatred, step back into the house like smoke you thought had cleared. I spent most of the day going through everything I remembered about him. Cody had always been the type of guy who'd get jealous when anyone got ahead of him. He'd whisper rumors. Undermine people. Then play innocent when confronted. But when I fired him 10 years ago, he'd stared at me like I'd stolen something from him. Like I had ruined his life. He'd vanished after that. Until now. I finally told Erin that night. We were eating leftovers in silence again. Spaghetti, round 2. His name's Cody Weller, I said. She froze with the fork halfway to her mouth. I used to work with him. Fired him 10 years ago. For stealing. She set the fork down. What does he want? I think he wants to burn us the way I burned Ben. She flinched. We never talked about the fire after that night. Never mentioned it out loud. But now, we had no choice. This guy, he's methodical, I said. He's not gonna come for us with a bat or a knife. He wants to dismantle everything. Make us paranoid. Distrust each other. Eat ourselves alive. Erin looked down at her hands. Well, she said, he's doing a good job. The next morning, we tried to get ahead of him. We filed a restraining order. Not that it meant much. There was no return address. No proof he'd been inside the house. The footage showed him near the front door, yes, but he hadn't broken in. Not technically. He's smart, I told the officer at the station. Then you be smarter, he said. Keep your heads down. Don't engage. Let us handle it. But that didn't sit right. Because it felt like we weren't dealing with a man anymore. We were dealing with a mind. A mind that was always a step ahead. That night, Erin couldn't sleep again. Neither could I. We took turns walking the perimeter of the house like nervous dogs. Checking locks. Windows. Curtains. At around 1:20 a.m., I found something in the backyard. A pile of leaves had been arranged in a perfect circle. In the middle, a single matchbox. Half full. I picked it up with gloved hands and opened it. Inside, tucked between the matches, was a small, folded piece of paper. Only fair, right? No name. No signature. But it was Cody. The implication hit me like a brick to the chest. He was reminding me what I'd done. How I'd set fire to something that wasn't mine. Now he was telling me. It was his turn. I brought the matchbox inside and placed it on the dining table. Erin stared at it like it was a bomb. It's just leaves, she whispered. No, I said. It's a message. He's going to burn our house down. I nodded slowly. Or worse, he wants us to believe he will. He wants us to panic. To confess. To rip ourselves apart. She paced the kitchen in her socks, then turned to me. We can't just wait. I know. So what do we do? I looked out the window. And in that moment, I realized something. If Cody wants to play God, I said, then let's show him how it feels to be watched. By noon the next day, I'd bought a new security system, motion lights, sensors, cameras with night vision and cloud storage. Every entry point wired. Every room covered. But that wasn't enough. I dug deeper. Pulled out my old laptop. The one I hadn't used in years but still had Cody's original job application saved in a folder from my old workplace days. I searched. And there it was. An emergency contact. His mother. Same name. Still lived in the area. Still had a landline. That night, I called her. "Mrs. Weller?" I asked. "Yes?" "I'm calling about your son, Cody." Long pause. "I haven't spoken to Cody in almost 5 years," she said. "He stopped coming by. Told me he didn't have a mother anymore. That mothers protect people. And I didn't protect him." I felt the weight in her voice. The grief that comes with shame. "Do you know where he is?" "No," she said. "But I know what he became." I waited. She hesitated. Then added, "He keeps notebooks. Hundreds of them. Writes down names. Places. Things that hurt him. You're probably in them." Chills ran up my arms. "Do you think he'd hurt someone?" Another pause. "Not unless he thought they deserved it." That night, the wind picked up. Leaves swirled across the lawn like they were chasing something invisible. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps. Not outside. Inside. Slow. Careful. Upstairs. I grabbed the crowbar. Rushed to the hallway. The lights flicked on automatically as I moved, motion sensors now fully wired. But no one was there. No shadows. No noise. No doors creaking open. Except one. The attic. The panel in the ceiling was slightly ajar. And right beneath it, on the floor, was a notebook. A leather-bound book with my name on a white label. Kyle, Chapter 1. The notebook lay on the floor like a trap waiting to snap shut. My heart pounded as I knelt down and picked it up. The cover was rough leather, worn from age, but the label, my name, Kyle, was crisp and new. I flipped it open. Inside were pages filled with neat handwriting. Page after page, it was his story. Not about me. About Cody. His thoughts. His pain. His obsessions. His vendetta. But as I read deeper, the lines blurred. Cody's words twisted into mine. My memories. My fears. My guilt. And then I reached a section titled, "The Truth." He wrote about how he had never really left me. How he'd been inside my life all along. Not as an enemy. But as a part of me. A shadow lurking in the corners of my mind. The notebook was not written by Cody. It was written by me. Pages filled with my memories twisted, memories I didn't remember making. I dropped the notebook, shaking. Aaron's voice echoed from downstairs, shaky and distant. "Kyle? Are you okay?" I called back, voice cracking. I think I'm losing it." That's when the police came back. Not because I called. Because someone did. A neighbor. They'd seen me pacing outside in the early morning fog. Talking to myself. Carrying a crowbar. The officers didn't ask questions. They just took me away. At the station, the truth came out. No Cody Weller ever existed. No stalking neighbor. No fire set by me or anyone else. It was all in my head. A mind fractured by years of stress, betrayal, and loneliness. The neighbor I thought was my best friend? Just a friendly guy who lent me a power tool once. The affair? A memory warped by my own insecurities. The fire? A nightmare I imagined after a minor kitchen accident. I was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. One personality, Kyle, the man I believed I was. The other, Cody, the darker side, punishing, vengeful. Months later, after therapy and medication, I returned home. Erin was waiting. The real Erin. Not the one from my broken mind. She hugged me, tears in her eyes. "I never left you," she whispered. "You just got lost." And as I unpacked the notebook one last time, I understood. The battle wasn't with my neighbor. It wasn't with Erin. It was within me all along. The true fire was inside.